Hello, my name is Prim, and welcome to the channel, where I like to focus on my creative process when making fictional characters, fictional stories, and fictional worlds. You read the title of this video. Today we're going to be going through some of my video game OCs. This is going to be a pretty unique video compared to my upcoming ones, since this is going to be multiple OCs in one video. I decided to go this direction for this video since the three OCs I'm going to be talking about today are pretty simple, especially compared to my other OCs that are much more complex and have a lot more to talk about. I'm not saying that is necessarily a negative, as I really do like these OCs and I'm proud of what I came up with. But just so you know for the future, most of my upcoming videos are just going to be one OC per video, since as said before, I'm going to have a lot more to talk about with each individual character, as I go over their personalities, their powers, their backstories, and their relationships with other characters, which you can definitely understand why they would be a little longer than this one would be. For those who haven't seen my introductory video, I highly recommend watching that before getting into this one, which I'll link down in the description. For those who have seen my introductory video, I'm gonna let you know that I am gonna break my format a little bit just for this one video. Since I'm just gonna be talking about three simple characters, I'm just gonna have one discussion for each character individually, instead of breaking each of them down into parts, which would just be unnecessary. With that out of the way, let's get started. Welcome to OC Factory. We're gonna go in alphabetical order, so my first OC I'm gonna be talking about is my Animal Crossing OC. I actually didn't really grow up with Animal Crossing, but I was always aware of it. It wasn't until 2020 that I picked up Animal Crossing New Horizons, and that was definitely a year that I think created a bunch of new Animal Crossing fans. That game really did come out at the perfect time, and I played the game so much that I basically had a routine. When I first started playing the game, I didn't really have any thoughts about creating an OC until I saw a few videos of people taking the base villager models and painting over them to make new villagers. When thinking about it, Animal Crossing is actually a really good game for first-time OCs, since you can either make a human character with the customization mechanics, or just take one of the villager models and paint over it, as said before. You can even easily create a personality for them since each villager has a specific personality type, like jock, lazy, smug, snooty, all that stuff. I could have gone that route, but I decided I wanted to challenge myself a bit and create what I call a special Animal Crossing character. Basically all the non-villager characters in the game that either introduce new mechanics or sell you stuff, like Tom Nook, Isabelle, Mr. Blathers, Red, or KK Slider. I figured that this would be a fun way to both introduce a new character and come up with hypothetical game mechanics for a hypothetical Animal Crossing game. And with that, let me introduce you to Bonnie. When coming up with some ideas for this hypothetical game mechanic, I thought about possibly incorporating luck as a feature. What if there was a character that could increase your good luck, which would then increase your chances of finding rare fish, bugs, fossils, recipes, and money? I know a lot of us were especially frustrated when we were trying to complete our collections but kept finding the same common ones over and over again. The common bass still haunts me to this day. I imagine this character would be very useful and might even become a fan favorite just for getting rid of that hassle. I also thought about a doctor character, which would introduce some sort of mechanic where you can get hurt or sick, and so you need to go to the hospital for help. I haven't played the other games, so I'm not sure if this is a feature in other Animal Crossing games, but in New Horizons you can get stung by bees or by scorpions, bitten by tarantulas, and faint or pass out or get injured, which normally you can just fix by going to the store and buying medicine. I thought it would be interesting to maybe expand on that mechanic. What if there's a chance that you could get sick from staying out in the rain for too long, or you could get some sort of sickness from being bitten or stung by a bug, or maybe you could even get injured from playing around too recklessly. It wouldn't be anything crazy like a game over or losing all your items or money or anything like that. I just figured that this would be a cool way to maybe get the player more immersed into the world. I decided to sort of combine these game mechanics into one character, and I basically came up with a Plague Doctor character. I figured this character would be a mysterious one by nature, with them always wearing a mask and having mysterious abilities to create potions and cure basically anything. I figured that they could give you special potions that would increase your luck in each individual thing, like increasing your luck in finding money, increasing your luck in finding rare recipes, fossils, so on. I didn't really have a specific gender in mind when creating this character and kinda went back and forth on if they should be a boy or a girl, but then I decided since the mystery aspect was such a big part of them, I figured maybe even leaving that up to a bit of a mystery. I figured I'd go the Undertale route, where they don't really have one canon identity and just leave it up to the player's interpretation. As I was designing this character, I definitely was subconsciously inspired by similar characters in other video games, like the merchant from Resident Evil 4.
Got some rare things on sale, stranger.
I was hard-pressed on a name for a bit, but when I looked at a lot of the other Animal Crossing characters, I realized that they're usually pretty punny, with Tom Nook being, Tanuki. So I figured, since this character is based on a plague doctor, I named them Bonnie, spelled B-O-N-I, which is derived from bubonic plague. Fun origin, I know, right? The Animal Crossing games don't really do 2D character art, so I figured the best thing I could do was make an amiibo card. As I was looking up other Animal Crossing amiibo cards for reference, I noticed that they had two names next to the main name, and at first I didn't know what they were, but then looking at them more, I realized that they were alternative names. And then I realized that the names that a lot of these characters have different ones in Japanese. I was already struggling with the main name, and now I needed to come up with two other ones. But I realized I really didn't have to put too much thought into them, since a lot of the Animal Crossing names are relatively simplistic and not really all that complex. So I decided to just combine the Japanese words for black, kuro, and crow, karasu, and came up with kudosu. For the second alternative name, I came up with Poe, basically being a reference to Edgar Allan Poe, the poet who wrote The Raven, which I think was a pretty obvious reference. Animal Crossing characters don't really have super complex personalities or backstories, but they are extremely endearing, and I think Bonnie fits into this world pretty well. Bonnie is a doctor, though the better word would be witch doctor, as they make potions that increase good luck as well as help cure diseases and curses. They don't have a medical degree, though their methods, as strange as they are, do seem to be working, as many of the customers seem to be cured right away. There have even been some rumors that Bonnie can make love potions, though they themselves neither deny nor claims that these rumors are true. I'm normally so used to designing characters with a lot of detail, but it's actually a lot of fun to design characters with more simplistic designs. It's honestly a bit more challenging than you'd expect to design a character in such a simple style and still make it look interesting. Bad simple character designs can come off as very generic and boring, but I'm hoping I got across the Plague Doctor inspiration while still making this character cute yet mysterious. A thing about designing video game characters that a lot of people don't think about is that they not only have to think about making the character look interesting, but also think about their design from a mechanical standpoint. Since Bonnie is a merchant character, I had to make them interesting enough so they stand out from the crowd, and so that the player would want to go interact with them. My other video game OCs don't really put too much stock into video game mechanics, but I figured since this character was specifically made to introduce a hypothetical game mechanic, it only made sense that I talk about it. I also thought it would just be interesting to talk about this side of character design, as designing a character for a comic or for animation or for video games has a lot of different rules and standards. Speaking of my other OCs, let's move on to my second video game OC. Similar to Animal Crossing, I didn't really grow up with the Mario franchise like many others did. Heck, my first Mario game was technically Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games for the Wii. Though I didn't really play the games, I always knew who Mario was. I mean, you'd have to live under a rock to not at least recognize his face. It wasn't until a bit later in my life that I got more into the Mario franchise, whether it be platformers, RPGs, the sports games, and Mario Party plus Mario Kart. The franchise definitely has a wide variety of genres, and it's not hard to see why the franchise got as big as it did with its bright and colorful world and its fun character designs. When making a new OC for this franchise, I really could have gone in a bunch of different directions, whether it be making another enemy, a new creature, or a new playable character for an RPG. But the character designs that I found myself getting really attached to were the princesses, being a Disney kid through and through. Similar to how my Animal Crossing OC introduces a new game mechanic, the princesses introduce whole new kingdoms for Mario and his friends to explore, and so I decided to create my own Mario Princess OC. Introducing Princess Eureka and her assistant Tinker. For this OC, I decided to go for a steampunk aesthetic, which in of itself was a bit of a challenge since I really love the steampunk aesthetics, but more as a viewer than drawing it myself since I really don't like drawing super detailed mechanical objects. And seeing other artists draw it so beautifully, it was definitely extremely intimidating to try tackling it. But I decided to try getting across that steampunk aesthetic with more simple designs. I mostly used Princess Daisy as a reference for my OC, since I really liked the flower theme she had going on in her design. To really get across that steampunk aesthetic in a more simple design, I tried using the gear symbol as a main element of her, much like how flowers are for Daisy and stars seem to be for Rosalina. As I drew her, I came up with the idea of a mad scientist princess, who created her kingdom by making robots as citizens. I think steampunk would work really well in the Mario franchise, especially for a whole world, since pipes are such a big thing in steampunk and the Mario franchise. I kind of imagine a sort of Dr. Seuss-esque steampunk world that Mario would have to maneuver through with giant gears, a lot like that scene from The Great Mouse Detective in the Clock Tower. Unlike my Animal Crossing OC, coming up with a name for my Mario princess came to me pretty quickly, honestly. I came up with the name Eureka, since I thought it sounded like a cute feminine name, as well as it really fitting the mad scientist vibe that I was going for. This is definitely one of those words that I think you are more likely to hear than actually see written down, and I was definitely surprised when I saw how you actually spell it. Since Mario is a Japanese franchise, I decided to spell it out in a way that a Japanese audience would be able to read it, with a more phonetic spelling. Though Eureka is a princess, I don't imagine she'd be super regal, so I figured she'd probably want to be called by a nickname, so she just goes by Rika, and for simplicity's sakes, I'm just going to be calling her that for the rest of this chapter. When it came to her design, I didn't want her to just look like a Princess Peach clone, but I still wanted her to look like a Mario princess. So I decided to follow some of the iconic elements of the princess designs, like the puffy sleeves and the crown. You can see in the speed draw that I originally wanted to give her a gear tiara of sorts, but I didn't really like the way it looked, and so I decided to just go the easy route and just design a crown similar to Peach, Daisy, and Rosalina. I felt like a long skirt didn't really suit Rika, so I decided to just make it a bit shorter to make her look a little more adventurous. I also made her gloves look similar to the ones you would see on cartoon mad scientists, only white instead of black. The other princesses have pretty basic shoes, so I decided to just make her gloves and boots match. Her little robot friend is named Tinker, and I figured that he would basically be what Toad is to Peach. I imagined that he'd be the first robot that Rika made, which is why he's as close to her as he is. When designing Tinker, I wanted to get across that toy robot look, and so I gave him a little wind-up key on his back. To get across that steampunk aesthetic, I decided to use trains as reference, and so I gave him a little train pipe on his head that would spew steam, train wheels, and a furnace on his body. Looking back at him, I realized that his design might have been subconsciously influenced by WALL-E, but I hope that his design is unique enough to where it doesn't look like a straight-up ripoff. Princess Eureka herself was definitely inspired by Mei Hatsume from My Hero Academia, both in design and personality. Given that the inventor aspect is such a big part of Eureka, I figured it'd be interesting to give her some sort of connection to another mad scientist in the Mario franchise, Professor Egad from the Luigi's Mansion games. Even as I'm recording the audio for this video, I'm still on the fence if I want to make Rika his granddaughter or just his apprentice, but either way, she would learn all of her skills of inventing from him. Whenever I develop a personality and backstory for an OC, I do my best to reference the character writing in whatever medium that I'm making an OC for. And in the Mario games, especially the RPGs, they show that you can write a character with a tragic backstory with complex motivations that wouldn't feel too out of place. So, I totally could give Eureka some sort of trauma, but luckily for her, her backstory isn't too tragic, maybe just a little sad. I thought about why she would feel the need to create a whole kingdom rather than just rule over an already existing one. And I figured that given how eccentric Rika is, it was probably hard for her to connect with others, and so she grew up without a lot of friends. She basically went the Toy Story 4 route of making a friend. She then created Tinker, her first friend, and after spending a lot of time with him, she decided to make some friends for him, and then make more friends, and so on and so forth. She made so many robots that she realized she needed to make homes for them, and then she started making even more homes for the more robots that she kept making, until she built a whole kingdom. The new kingdom needed a ruler, and so of course, Eureka was made princess of the Steamy Kingdom. Though they are robots, I do imagine the Steamy King subjects not being all that different from any other character in the Mario games, with their own personalities, jobs, hobbies, and lives. So far, when it comes to the robots, I've only really designed Tinker, but I do imagine a lot of the other robots that Eureka made would have a bunch of different designs and different shapes, with different steampunk aesthetics, some being taller, shorter, bigger, smaller, all that stuff. I think Princess Eureka and the Steamy Kingdom have a lot of potential, but I think I'm gonna have to be in a specific mood to try and draw a whole steampunk Mario world. Maybe that'll be a future video, who knows? My next OC comes from a game that many OC creators are all too familiar with. Unlike Animal Crossing and Mario, I actually grew up with Sonic, though not through his games. My first actual introduction to Sonic was through the Sonic X anime on 4Kids. I got really attached to Sonic and his friends, so much so that I went searching for other Sonic cartoons and found some of the older ones, like Sonic Saturn, The Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog, and Sonic Underground, which I'll just say has the best Sonic theme song, equal to Gotta Go Fast. I liked them for what they were, and even got attached to a lot of the characters from Sonic Saturn, but none of them stood a chance against the obsession I had with Sonic X as a kid. Sonic X is actually the reason I make original characters in the first place, which I imagine is not all that unique of a story for anyone who also grew up with Sonic X and then made OCs later in life. My first ever OC was a Sonic OC, however it's not this Sonic OC. We'll save that one for a future video since I have so much information and so much detail dedicated to that one character. I kinda think that there are two types of Sonic characters, that being the classic Sonic characters and the modern Sonic characters, with the classic ones being a little more simplistic and easy to understand, and the modern ones having a lot more complex personalities and tragic backstories. The OC we're going to be talking about in this video leans more towards classic. It is actually a relatively recent one that I made after getting into Sonic Mania and the classic style that it brought back. Say hello to Kix the kangaroo. Whenever I make a Sonic OC, I usually try using an animal that hasn't been really used in either the games or the comics or any other medium, more just for fun and just to see what those animals might look like in the Sonic style. I've had the idea for a kangaroo OC for a long time, but I was struggling to think of any sort of personality traits, and so I googled Sonic Kangaroo just to see what came up. And I saw that there was a robot kangaroo enemy that used the spring pads around Green's Hill Zone to jump. I also played a bit of Sonic Forces, mostly just for the character creator to play around with and get some inspiration, and I saw that one of the gloves and boots that you could wear are spring pad themed, and basically I went from there. Originally, I just started sketching out a Sonic Kangaroo character, and thought up the idea of a young Joey that is a big Team Sonic fanboy. His favorite member of the team is Knuckles, and he tries to be what Tails is to Sonic. I imagine initially Knuckles would be annoyed by him, but he would probably be endeared by how much Kix looks up to him, and might even enjoy the praise. Kix is around the same age as Cream and Charmy, so I imagine he'd probably spend a lot of time around them. In spending a lot of time with them, I imagine he'd probably develop a bit of a crush on Cream, which he probably wouldn't be able to express all that well, given that he is a little boy. I want to try avoiding the whole boy bullies girl because he likes her thing, especially from someone who suffered from that as a kid, so I imagine Kix with more of a tough guy act rather than just straight up bullying Cream. I imagine their dynamic would be something similar to Anya and Damien from Spy Family, or Sakura and Sharon from Cardcaptor Sakura. Being a kangaroo, he obviously be able to jump really high and use his tail to attack enemies. I kind of imagine it being similar to how Pikachu does with Iron Tail in the Pokemon anime. Kix is a very rascally kid, so he loves to beat up badniks and any other enemy. However, being a young boy, he also has a dream of possibly befriending one of these enemy robots, but most of the time they decline his offer. Tails has even offered to build him a robot friend, but Kix declined since he didn't really think his robot designs were nearly as cool as Eggman's. I could definitely see an Iron Giant or How to Train Your Dragon type plot with Kix and some sort of enemy robot. I know befriending a Eggman robot is nothing new to the Sonic world, but I think it'd be really cute with this character specifically. For those of you wondering, where the heck is this kid's parents? I actually did draw his mom. Her name is Boots, and I kind of imagine her like a Lara Croft type character, being an adventurous treasure hunter. The Sonic world definitely doesn't seem to have any issues with little kids kind of just running around and fighting robots as much as they want. And I imagine Boots is probably just fine with letting Kix do his own thing, since they are both pretty independent and pretty adventurous. She also knows that Sonic and his friends can protect him if it does get a little too dangerous. And Kix doesn't really mind this arrangement, as it just means he gets to spend more time going on adventures and hanging out with his friends. He actually looks up to his mom a lot, and definitely gets a lot of his personality traits from her. I think the character type that I'm trying to write for Kix is very easy to make annoying, as I've seen my fair share of cartoons with characters that fit into a similar role, like Scrappy-Doo or any of those 80s cartoons where they try to insert a kid into an episode, but they only cause problems for the heroes. I tried avoiding this by making Kix strong enough to defend himself, but not so much so that he never needs help from others. He is still a kid after all. I honestly don't think there's anything wrong with a character needing to be rescued sometimes, just as long as it makes sense and that they're a likable character in most other situations. Writing a kid character can also be very tricky, especially if they're supposed to be kind of adventurous and maybe a little annoying, but not to the audience. I can only hope that Kix comes off more as endearing than annoying. I also imagined he would have a cute little Australian accent, like one of the kids in Bluey.
Hello, Dr. Ladies. You sell crackers?
Well, that wraps it up for my 3 video game OCs. What'd you think? Did you like them? Do you think that there could be some improvements? Let me know down in the comments, as long as we keep it respectful. I plan on showing off a bunch of other OCs, with each of them getting their own separate videos, where I can talk a lot more about the creative process and all the information about them. Until then, bye bye dreamers!